Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday session of Live at the Waterhole. My name is Kenneth Gamble. I know it's been a while since I was last here, almost about a month. It's good to be back. We're starting off with a bit of action here at Tortola's camp in Kenya. We've got a few baboons messing around and they'll definitely keep us entertained. And of course, a striking crowned crane in the background there. So that's certainly a plus, especially for a birder as myself. Just a reminder, the show's live and interactive, so please feel free to send in your questions or comments, and it always adds another dimension to the show. I'll do my best to answer and discuss them. These baboons are certainly having quite a fun day here. Well, it's always relatively warm. I'll use that word sparingly, but clearly it's not too hot at the moment, but I think they're seeking out shade. Also nice to see a second crane has popped out there. That would be quite normally expected. They are often in pairs. Maddie, you're starting us off. Well, sorry, let me work through the questions. Anke van Skalkweg, you're asking what are the birds in the background. Those are crowned cranes. I think the full name would be grey-crowned crane. I don't want to jinx myself, but yeah. Maddie, you'd like to know what the difference between a leopard and a cheetah is. Off the bat, one could purely go on size. A leopard is a much stockier and stronger animal. Cheetah is quite slim and slender. It's built for speed compared to a leopard, which is built for raw ambush power. Not to say leopards aren't quick, just the cheetahs are very quick runners. And then a few more interesting differences. Their rosettes are, well, a leopard has rosettes. A cheetah's got more traditional spots, etc. A cheetah cannot retract its claws like other cats can, whereas a leopard can retract its claws. Leopards are capable of roaring, cheetahs cannot. So there's quite a few differences, but I think just off a few simple ones would be your size and their build, etc. I would personally not consider a cheetah nearly as dangerous as what I would consider a leopard to be. I must make an apology on the name of the cranes. So while grey-crowned crane is correct, that would be correct if you are looking at these cranes in southern Africa. The species that occurs north of the equator would be the black-crowned crane. Now, they both look rather similar, and I'm not too sharp on the differences. I must actually just review them, but important to note there are two different species actually. It's certainly entertaining watching these baboons just grooming and mucking around. I certainly do prefer watching baboons at a distance. They are a nuisance at lodges or in campsites, but when they are in their natural surroundings, it's truly fantastic to sit back and just watch them behave as they normally would in nature. And they quickly do take on a comical sense. I don't know if it's sometimes as humans we see similarities, but funny animals nonetheless. And there was a question earlier asking if friendship and baboons is purely strategic or if there's genuine emotional bonds. I think in my personal opinion, if I had to lean to one of them, I would say probably a bit more strategic. Of course, they are intelligent animals, but I do think at the end of the day it is about strategy and survival. And these bonds obviously help with protection, support in conflicts, and access to resources, so that's tying in quite strongly with the strategy survival part of it. But yeah, these relationships are also quite long-term and consistent. So there's grooming, close association, as we're seeing here. And it can be stressful when these bonds are broken, when an animal's maybe injured or hurt or killed by a predator or in a conflict. So it does certainly appear there is a bit more to it. I just don't know if it's the long-term association that leads to it. But of course, at the same time, I don't think baboons feel emotions on the deep level that humans maybe do. But once again, still very complex creatures. Having a real battle royale there, mucking about on the grass. Shayna, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the kind message. It's good to be back. I must have missed it, but it's been a good month of adventure and travel for me, from Kruger to birding destinations. I've had quite a bit of fun, but it's always nice to be back. Well, we're going to leave our baboons to carry on with their business. We're going to hop on over to Lentor. Ooh, there's quite a small little baboon, very cute. Apologies, but we're going to head over to Lentor and see what's going on there. A very photogenic terrapin on this fine Sunday. Looking quite happy. I am really enjoying seeing all the different spots, and it's wonderful to be back. Nice to see our terrapin friend, but we're going to go to Ulu Saba. Some pied kingfishers have made a kill, and we're already here, so that's fantastic. See, there's all three of them. We can see the small fish. I actually think that's possibly a chick that is begging from the adult there. I would. Oh, there's another kingfisher. They are quite camouflaged on this guano-covered stump, or dead tree stump, or log, whichever you prefer. But certainly blending in a bit there. But that very much looked like begging behavior. But I think these kids might be a bit big to still get such favors from their parents. So they're probably just trying their luck. Jackie, darling, you had a question. What are the first signs of loss of condition in ellies? So normally their hips and their backbone becomes quite exposed. If you look for that in droughts or late in the winters, you'll notice that quite a bit. Their hips and their backbone are quite exposed or stand out quite a bit. And I've also found that their temples become, or their temples become quite sunken in. It's as if the skin around their face becomes quite drawn and etc. It's actually quite interesting. I remember quite a few years ago, there was a tusker I saw at the end of quite a dry year. It was December, but you could see his condition wasn't great, to the point I actually didn't think he would make it another season. And he actually lived for another 2-3 years before finally passing away from old age. But it was interesting to see how his condition changed, because as a tusker he was documented quite a bit, to see his condition improve and change in the wet seasons again. So there was quite a good comment from Melanistic Marble mentioning that Tortillus Camp is south of the equator, and it is very much so. So I went on a bit of a goose hunt on the wonderful resource of Birds of the World from Merlin, just comparing the grey-crowned crane and the black-crowned crane. Differences are quite interesting, but brings me to the conclusion that that was actually a grey-crowned crane. I was looking at the distribution. The black-crowned crane is almost in the further northern reaches of Kenya, if anything. So close, but it's good to check and learn these things. It's also a reminder of how out of touch you can be if you're not. I always find myself quite sharp on southern African birds, but it's a whole different ball game when you move to different regions of a continent. But that's probably the most exciting thing in the bird watching hobby, is there is so much to learn and see from. So, Bush Guy, you'd like to know, or you're saying that pied kingfishers often bob their heads and flick their tails while perched, and you'd like to know what might these movements signal to other birds. So I think it's got a lot to do with their hunting ability, or sorry, their way of hunting. But I think generally what it's signaling the most is that there's a lot of refraction going on in the water, so hence why you often see them bobbing around or moving their heads. They're just paying attention, looking for food. One must always be aware, looking for the next opportunity, especially when you have quite a unique fishing style, such as the kingfisher does. And I think also it shows to rivals that they are alert, or they're quite aware and they're busy. They're not unaware or docile. You can see these ones are hopping up and down quite a bit here on the log. Excuse me for the tongue twister. There's obviously quite a few small fish seeking refuge in the structure of this dead tree in the water here. It is quite interesting to watch the other hunting technique of the pied kingfisher when they hover quite high above the water and then dive down. Also noting that not all kingfishers are fish catchers or fishermen. There are quite a few terrestrial kingfishers that hunt insects, lizards and amphibians. Can certainly see that this is quite a popular perching spot for a lot of the aquatic birds in the area. You can see quite a few markings of guano or bird droppings. Then again, a spot like this is prime real estate in an aquatic habitat, so it wouldn't take, I'm sure there's not many spots like this around this dam, so it would be quickly used by the likes of herons, cormorants, kingfishers. I'm trying to think what else. Egrets would use it. A few storks, I'm sure. Geese would also rest on it. Penelope Kenyon, I do agree that was quite a decent fish there. Actually be interesting to know how many fish they catch in a day. They obviously we're going to move over to Lentor. There's something interesting going on with the terrapin, but yeah, it would actually be very interesting to know how many fish they catch in a day, because I'm sure the energy expenditure is quite high, so they need to continuously catch fish throughout the day. I see our terrapins are having a bit of a wrestling match on this afternoon. I do remember a couple times they do funny things. They sometimes chase each other off the perching log in the middle of the waterhole. Quite entertaining creatures, to say the least. I do find them a bit more, I don't know if creepy is the right word, but a bit more scarier than a tortoise. I think a tortoise looks a lot more friendly, and also knowing what terrapins eat, etc. They are obviously carnivorous. They eat fish and amphibians, and sometimes they've been known to even bite aquatic waterfowl. They do have a nasty bite on them.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
The Explorer Chat is a magnificent way to make new friends who share your interest in nature. As an explorer, you'll also get your very own dashboard and personalized profile, plus the ability to save and share your favorite wildlife incidents with our brand new Safari Screenshots feature. Share sightings, swap stories, and experience nature together with people who feel the same pull to the wild as you do. Wild Earth Explorers, wilder together.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
These terrapins, they are quite flattened and built like flippers, so that is to aid with swimming. Whereas if you looked at a tortoise's feet, they're round and quite stubby, and it's for obviously walking in tough terrain and carrying the weight of that shell. So yeah, that's also quite a bit of a different adaptation. Mawiti, you'd like to know which one is the male. I must confess, in tortoises it's very easy. The shape of the shell shows that quite easily. Males or females have a flat shell and males have a indented or concave shell for mounting the females during intercourse. I don't think it's the same with terrapins. I'll have a bit of a read, but yeah, it's a bit challenging to see, especially with your reptiles and amphibians. Their sex organs are internal, so you cannot just see from the outside like you could with male mammals, etc. It is quite funny to think that these two terrapins, for some strange reason, are very comfortable like this. There is so much space to go around, and this other one has chosen to just completely lie quite comfortably on top of the other one, for no real apparent reason that I can tell. It doesn't look like, well, they definitely are not mating, and I'm not sure why they choose to lie like this. So I did some quick reading. It is the size and length of the tail that's one of the more reliable features among body size and claws, etc. But in this situation, we can't really compare the two. The one on top obviously looks bigger than the one at the bottom, so there's a couple too many unknowns that I would say are present to make a good comparison here, which one's which. But at the end of the day, the terrapins seem quite happy nonetheless. So had a few wood doves poking around, and I'm sure also watching the antics of these terrapins with a bit of curious interest. Benji, so you'd like to know, why do terrapins have such unique shell scoots and act like fingerprints? No two are exactly alike. And if you can really estimate their age by counting growth rings. So of course you can measure the age by looking at growth rings. It's usable in quite a few things. I read an interesting article actually about it in crocodiles, and they were saying there's some research coming to light where it's not as necessarily accurate as they thought. It can be a bit out, but it still gives a good indication. It's just due to the way that reptiles have growth cycles during different times of the year or seasons. But anyway, nonetheless, the scoots, as you refer to them on the shell there, I think the easiest way to compare it is how, a lot of animals look similar, but there's always slight differences. The wrinkles on an elephant to another elephant are different. The freckles on one human to another human, they're both freckles, but they're never in the same location. It's determined by genetics, age, growth rate, etc. So these are the type of things that will influence them, and why they'll never be perfectly exact. Quite a lot of things like that in nature are never that truly perfect. Even in birds, I think birds have quite a uniform plumage, but there will always be slight differences from one to another. I think a lot less in birds though. And then just back onto the growth ring, sorry. It's quite reliable in younger animals to give a rough idea of the age. Like I said, as they get older, and it's come to light in crocodiles, that there's certain factors that can affect the growth, and there's good seasons and bad seasons, and obviously in a bad season an animal will grow less than it would in a good season. So it can be done. It's just I didn't call it the most super accurate, but it's pretty good way of finding out, considering we can't ask the animals for their age, and they can't verbally tell us. It seems like our bottom terrapin is making a break for it, as it's a bit tired of being at the bottom of this pile. Shana, you were asking why doesn't the one below try to dislodge the bigger one on top? Certainly one of life's mysteries. I'm not sure why it allowed the one to climb on it in the first place, but I mean, compared to a lot of other freshwater turtle species, where they often also pile on one another when they on a bank, etc. I don't know why they choose to lie on top of each other like that. Doesn't seem, well, it seems like quite a feat to get right in the first place, but interesting nonetheless. It is very funny because they're still incredibly docile. I cannot really fathom why not so much the roughhousing, but just why it would want to climb on the other one. As mission control says, maybe the terrapins are just giving each other a hug there, but lonely post Valentine's Day. It seems like they might be going on their separate ways now. Still no closer to determining which one's a male and a female. I must say that one in the top right corner, that one's tail looks quite long if I had to compare it to the one walking away now. So I could maybe assume the one that was on top was a female, but very interesting to say the least, or entertaining. I think that's the word I would go for today. Seems like they've had enough hug time, and it's back to basking in the sun. It's quite nice to have such confiding creatures. Often when I walk up to a water body here in Hoedspruit, the terrapins go scrambling for the water, so you don't often get to watch their antics too up close unless you're in a bird hide like structure where they can't really see you or notice you, and they be a little more confiding. Well, we're going to leave our curious terrapins and head over to Tembe for some action there. I'm looking quite forward to seeing it. Not the usual big animals we're used to seeing here at Tembe. Normally the elephants are the first sight to greet us, but it's wonderful to see the warthogs doing their thing. I'm sure there is probably an elephant lurking nearby, but these warthogs look very content about life. And also a few Egyptian geese hanging around. And it looks like these warthogs have also had their mud bath for the day already and are quite focused on grazing at the moment. You can see that darker color on their skin indicating they've already gotten wet. It's quite interesting to see on the bottom left how mud covered the grass is. Well, that would most definitely be from the elephants splashing themselves with mud, and the grass obviously being in the part of the spray zone gets coated in a bit of mud as well. But these warthogs are just really enjoying this wonderful fresh grass that basically grows all year round around the pan here. A good example of how a bit of a micro habitat can be established. Maybe micro habitat's not a bad word. Compared to maybe the rest of the reserve where the vegetation will start to dry out. So these warthogs are definitely in some very prime habitat, but obviously as the season marches on, competition will increase, and obviously the predators will also start to focus their efforts in this area with lots of grazing animals or herbivores. That warthog's having a bit of a nice mud bath. They always look quite comical for me when they get in the water. Oh, that one's got a bit of zoomies or something bitted on the bum. Not sure if it was a cheeky terrapin, but I think it's just a case of the zoomies. I was about to say surprisingly no ellies, but I do see one skirting around the back there. I caught a brief glimpse of its bum. Unfortunately, it does look like it's on its way out, but I'm sure there are quite a few more elephants inbound. It's quite normal to come or to see them coming to drink at this time of day, all hanging around nearby. It's amazing how they can sneak away so quickly or effectively. Also a bit of a tussle going on between those two warthogs. I must say this looks like three young animals. I thought they were maybe a bit older, but they actually do look quite young. Three young warthogs in the big and scary world, finding their way forward. At least they're in a relatively decent location. Just unfortunately there are some lions in the area. But that is the game of life for a warthog. Benji, you'd like to know, is the mud mainly for cooling, sun protection, or parasite control? I would say it's all three. I don't think they necessarily use it at any point for more than one of the specifics. When you use it, it's going to do all three. It will cool down as it dries or as it's exposed to evaporation. It will inadvertently provide sun protection by caking the skin, and yeah, also by smothering the parasites. So an animal will always receive all three of those benefits upon using mud to coat their skin. It's kind of like, I think I would liken it to brushing your teeth. Get rid of the plaque, and it also makes your breath smell nice. Whether you do it for one or the other, it's still gonna have the same effect. Shayna, I do agree, there is very much a certain beauty to Egyptian geese. I think it's probably goes a bit unsaid since they're quite common and taken for granted. Also their call doesn't do them any favors. It is quite coarse and harsh, so it's probably not the most flattering of sounds, but they are quite striking birds. Personally, one of my favorite ones is the shell duck that we have seen a few times on Live at the Waterhole. I think mainly just at Tau, but still a very cool water bird for me. Always get very excited when we see all the different types of ducks, etc. Melanistic marble, I do agree. I must say all the animals are really enjoying this wet weather after all the rains throughout the country. I think Tembe had a decent dose. I don't think it was... No, there was actually, sorry, there was some flooding that did occur there. I speak under correction. Maybe not as bad as the Kruger, but I do know there was parts that were negatively impacted. It was quite interesting to see. About a week or two ago, I was in the very far north of the Kruger, and there is copious amounts of water and pans around. Unfortunately, a lot of the migrant birds have already left, but there's still some cool things to see. But it's so wonderful to see the bush so green and lush and full of life, especially in a section of Kruger that probably receives, or definitely does receive, the least rainfall of any of the regions over its vast area. Certainly made game viewing quite challenging, but it's nice to see nature in all its different spectrums or stages and seasons. Josh, you'd like to know, are Egyptian geese big or small compared to other geese? So my frame of reference, I think it'd be a bit tough for me to compare to some of the geese in America, etc., like the Canada goose. And also noting they're called geese, but they're actually a type of shell duck, but it's a bit of semantics, because a shell duck, for all intents and purposes, is a bit more like a goose anyway. But they are quite a large bird. I'd maybe probably call them, say, a bit smaller than your conventional domesticated goose. In southern Africa we have another species called also through other parts of Africa, the spur-winged goose. That is quite a large one, which I would say compares almost to the size of a swan, and is noticeably bigger than an Egyptian goose. But they are still quite large birds. And these warthogs are really having a bit of a tussle, obviously just play fighting. Anyway, we're gonna leave these warthogs and geese to do their thing and head on over to the basin. We have some lechwe to look at. One of the species we probably see the least on the show, the elegant lechwe. It's actually such a privilege or wonderful thing that there's so many camera locations thanks to Africam. It really opens up one's perspective, or allows one to see the difference through animal diversity throughout the continent. But it's quite nice seeing these lechwes here. Obviously they're quite specialized in their wetland habitats where they're found. You don't naturally find any lechwe in South Africa. They are found in southern Africa and Botswana. Kind of a bit like a water impala for me. Connie, you'd like to know if lechwe like water? I would say they thrive in water. It's a big part of their habitat requirements or their lifestyle. They're excellent swimmers. They do very well in water, wetland environments. Not to say they won't thrive without water. In parts of South Africa, on private game farms, people keep them in relatively dry areas and they cope quite fine. But when one is speaking about natural adaptations, they are built for the water and the swamps, etc. So they swim very well, they're able to move quite rapidly. If they're ever chased by predators, the first place they will head to is the deeper water or marshy environments where they can move quite rapidly and swiftly. It's a pity there isn't a male with them at the moment. It seems like just a few females. The males are very, I don't know, stunning, extravagant. There's a word, regal, that's the word I'm looking for. They are quite regal looking. Quite interesting how these lechwe are standing. It appears a bit like a protective circle, but I must say they all look like they're just taking it quite chilled. Of course there will be a bit of safety or better vigilance in the way that they're standing, everyone facing outwards in a direction to notice any approaching danger, etc. I think a very normal position for them. Well, we're going to leave our elusive lechwe, who seem to not be doing too much, and head on back to Lentor. There's a bit of action there again. There was a hammerkorp waiting for us here, but he's unfortunately done a runner on us, as birds love to do. Last while I've decided to get a bit more into my bird photography, and I would be lying if I said it was not frustrating at times. Looking at birds and photographing them is two different things altogether, and I highly respect anyone that photographs or videographs birds. It's quite a challenge. It looked like there was a drongo that came flitting in there after an insect. It's probably perched nearby on a tree. I must say this pan's looking quite full at the moment. Of course it is artificially filled, of course, but it looks fuller than I'm used to. Probably a bit of rain that's also been keeping it full. There's something flying in the tree there, but that appears to be some doves. I don't think it's anything too wild. There's a couple doves moving in there and chasing each other around. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they look like laughing doves. Anyway, we'll leave the peaceful doves to do their thing and chase one another in the thorn tree. We are going to head over to Tau for some action there. Some good old wildebeest and zebra action. Couple of crocodiles. I haven't seen them for quite a while. It's nice to see them revealing themselves quite easily. You can definitely see two on the bank there, and I'm suspicious that there's another one in the water. It looks like some scoots from the one's back sticking out above the water surface there. It's easy to forget that there are quite large crocodiles in this waterhole here at Tau. The bush is also changing quite convincingly in this part of South Africa at the moment, but autumn is in full swing. You can see it on the sunrises and sunsets. The times are changing quite rapidly. The bush is slowly drying out, although we are quite thankful and blessed. It's been a very productive wet season, so I think the animals will have quite a bit of food. The most amazing thing for me is always when we see the bush in these situations, when it's green and lush and vibrant, and it's very tough to imagine in 6 months how bare and barren a lot of the habitat is going to look. I'm sure in 6 months this will be a stark difference, but nonetheless it sorts itself out every year. Tongue twisting myself. Two very comfortable looking crocodiles. I think the third one is actually just a reflection from the one on the bank there. But you could not pay me enough to dip a toe in this water, knowing these large reptiles are lurking nearby. Paul, you'd like to know, why do some people say zebras look like they are wearing pajamas? Now, I would hazard a guess it probably looks a lot like the pajamas of old people used to wear that were striped, often blacks and whites, etc. But generally that striped patterning that pajamas were often made up of. So I think it's a bit of a light-hearted joke on the side of many guides. Obviously, of all the wild horse species, zebras stick out quite a bit with a unique pattern, whereas most other horse species tend to be one general color and often a bit drab looking. See, there's quite a few birds as always. A black-winged stilt, a lapwing near the crocodile there. Taxi lady, you'd like to know why would the crocodiles hang out together? So of course crocodiles aren't social animals at all. There is a bit of a loose hierarchy. There always will be a dominant male, and he will not tolerate intruders. He will tolerate other females, or males in the area must be submissive as per usual. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about space, good basking spots. Obviously this is quite a good basking spot, hence why I'm seeing more than one crocodile propped up here. But it's at the end of the day always about tolerance. At a carcass or a kill or feeding site, that all goes out the window. It's very much a lot of competition and aggression. There's plenty of examples out there of crocodiles biting and injuring one another at carcasses. At the end of the day, it's actually just about the biggest animal wins. There's also plenty of examples of cannibalism in crocodiles. So yeah, I think in this case there's I would call it an uneasy truce or awareness. But if you're small, you have to be a very awake small crocodile. Obviously, as water levels drop also, you tend to see crocodiles crowding up quite a bit more than you would in the wet season. Also appears like we have a grey heron that's popped up at the back there, busy preening itself and maintaining its feathers. There's also a sneaky waterbuck coming in. It's the only one. I'm sure there's probably a few more in tow, but it seems to be doing its own thing. Penelope Kenyon mentioning that it's quite a big crocodile. Those are definitely not small ones, that's for sure. No, there's one moving a bit. Either seen something or to go lay an ambush. But yeah, these crocodiles are definitely at the 3-meter mark easily. That's when they start getting big and dangerous. Shana also saying hopefully the zebras stay safe. Yeah, it's not they obviously need to be quite careful where they drink here, in the shallows where they can see any approaching danger. These wildebeest and zebra of course have the advantage over their cousins in the Masai Mara that they do not need to cross the waterhole here at Tau. They just merely need to be careful where they drink. But of course these crocodiles have not gotten bigger over the years for nothing. They will most definitely catch the unsuspecting antelope or zebra during the year. I think a couple years ago I remember the crocodiles having caught a water buck. Seems like our crocodile is carefully planning its next move, just watching carefully and deciding where's a good spot to maybe hide out a bit in the hope of catching something. I saw some interesting footage on social media of expedition team further north in Africa in the Luangwa, and what challenges they were having with the large crocodiles actually following and chasing their boats, and due to the crocodiles in that region having learned how to capsize people from canoes and boats. I think that must be quite a terrifying prospect to have a crocodile pursuing you in a boat. I know we often feel safe in a boat. Obviously a canoe is quite different, but yeah, I think that's quite an intimidating prospect to experience. Crocodiles just come back into frame again, slowly just heading to the corner there. I'm not sure what it has in mind, but I'm sure it's planning to just lie up patiently in that area where the animals drink from in the corner there. And obviously as it's moving, the zebras and wildebeest are not going to be too aware of it. And it's not necessarily counting on these ones, or maybe count on the next herd that comes in that's completely unaware of its presence. Millicent was talking about the blue wildebeest and their crazy antics. I remember growing up as a child, they were often referred to as the clowns of the bushveld. They're often running around for no apparent reason all over the show. And that crocodile is cruising in quite convincingly. It seems like the zebras and waterbuck are partially aware of its presence, but clearly up to something. You can see the other one with its mouth open now, just regulating its temperature. Truly fascinating, intimidating animals. They are very interesting to watch, but they are also quite scary and proficient hunters. I'd like to think this waterbuck can probably see this crocodile right in front of it. I'm not sure if we're going to see a bit of an interesting interaction here. Obviously I don't think there's too much danger in this situation for the waterbuck. Okay, now it's slowly aware that there is a crocodile lying in front of it. It shows you just how camouflage can work so effectively. that waterbuck was not remotely aware. Could maybe see it, or could maybe argue it maybe caught scent of the crocodile before it saw it. Very interesting interaction there. Still don't know if it's actually seen it incredibly well, or if it's suspicious that there is something going on there. I must say, in that situation though, the crocodile suddenly looked quite a bit smaller than the waterbuck, but it is the trap of that depth perception from the camera. It looked like the waterbuck was almost on top of the crocodile, but I think you'll find there was a bit of space.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
Some rivalries don't need explaining. They're felt. They're etched into history. The All Blacks, the Springboks, head to head in South Africa. Join us for 2 unforgettable tests, from the fiercest rivalry in sport to luxury safari, hosted by a Springbok legend. Rugby and Safari by Wild Earth Travel. The greatest rivalry, experienced the only way it should be.
These lions are doing what the lions do best.
Good morning, Heine. How was your night?
Smells like Vicks. You're lively this morning, Impo.
I had a cup of coffee. And that's how big it is.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
It's very interesting. Oh, doves. I almost felt like I gave them a fright by talking, but it obviously wasn't me. Those look like Namakwa doves, as we call them here. I say that in all caution, because the East African birds are quite diverse. There we go. Our dove has come back. As far as I'm aware, it is a Namakwa dove. It seems like there's one species throughout Africa. It's quite interesting actually to see them here, because I thought they were quite restricted to the more arid, dry regions in southern Africa. I didn't think they were found on the eastern half of the continent. The terrapins are repositioning once more to achieve what? No one knows. And the smaller one appears to be pretending to be a rock. And the larger one is sniffing at the dirt, resting, I'm not sure. It's quite interesting how much their necks can stretch out. I always find that quite interesting, maybe also a little unnerving. But yeah, they can really extend their necks quite a bit. Maybe it is a bit of a territorial dispute, I'm not sure. The larger one just seems to be going in circles now. Definitely think I'll spend the rest of the week investigating terrapin behavior a bit more. As random as it looks, I'm sure there is some, well, there must be a reason behind this. Things in nature don't happen for nothing, but it's certainly rather curious. Also quite fascinated because it appears to be two different terrapins than we earlier saw. I'm not sure why it's trying to approach the front of the other terrapin. The smaller one is certainly trying to avoid the advances of the larger one, but very curious. Well, we're going to leave the mysteries of our terrapins behind for a bit and head over to Tembe again for some elephant action. And there we go, nice to see the elephants here. Essentially right on cue. They love coming down to the water from about midday onwards. It's quite nice to see them. I think there's a jacana there by the feet of that one elephant. Looks quite a bit like a jacana. Looks like a young bird. As far as I can tell, that looks like a jacana. Lady Macbeth mentioning she doesn't think any reptiles have been shown to be territorial. Yeah, not to my knowledge. It's only crocodiles, as far as I'm aware, that there's generally a dominant crocodile in or dominant male crocodile in a water source that won't tolerate smaller males that are not submissive. The dominant crocodile is often referred to as a bull. Quite a funny term for a crocodile. So wonderful seeing these tembe giants again. They've got such magnificent tusks that one can really admire. It does appear to be a little warm that side in Tembe, unless these elephants are just resting and having a bit more of a dust bath, but it seems like they're taking it very easy and flapping those ears to dissipate some heat. That being said, it doesn't appear like either of them have had much of a mud bath yet. It'd be quite nice if that larger bull on the right maybe turned around so we could admire him a bit more. At the moment we are just admiring his rear end. Also saw that jacana moving around in the grass at the edge of the water there. That actually reminds me of that previous topic we were talking about reptiles not being shown to be territorial or aggressive. Maybe not necessarily a territory in the sense, but they will definitely compete for males, which kind of plays into the territorial thing. It reminded me of an article I read the other day about tortoises in Addo or the Eastern Cape. I forget the name of the species, but the males have quite a it's kind of like the bow of a boat, but at the base of their shell this sticks out, and they actually use it to ram one another and get into territorial fights for the right to mate with females. I must really go find out what the name of that tortoise was, but the pictures they showed, the tortoises were actually, had cuts and there was blood where they'd stabbed one another, etc., with this pronounced shell that sticks out from the base. It's quite interesting nonetheless. Interesting how nature works. Penelope, you're mentioning how you love watching jacanas walk on lily pads. It is always a very entertaining activity. We can see it running now across on the open ground there. Obviously it does not feel as safe or at ease and on the ground as it does out on the water and the lily pads, but it is rather amazing how they've adapted themselves for that lifestyle by having those long big toes that help distribute their weight. Of course they themselves don't weigh much, so it also assists, but it's quite interesting. It's also interesting to note that the males raise mainly the chicks. Anyway, I don't think our elephant bull is going to cooperate, and seems to be content to show us his bum, but he does look quite extravagant nonetheless. But we are going to Rosie's pan to admire some giraffes. A very speedy giraffe here at Rosie's pan. I'm not sure where it's off to. I'm sure it will stop somewhere and we should be able to get a good view. Starting to look quite a bit drier in this part of the Kruger, or in Belule. Grass has dried out considerably. It's tough to think that there were such widespread damaging floods a few months ago here. But fortunately the pan survived. It was very intimidating. There's another giraffe cruising across the grassland there, or the open section. It really is looking like the dry season of the winters in full swing now. And trees will start to lose quite a bit more of their leaves. Bit of a tougher time for the giraffes. They've had quite a selection of leaves to feed on, but now as winter approaches, a lot of them will, or a lot of the trees will start to drop their leaves now. Can see a small oxpecker clinging on there. There's actually another one. There's two. There's one on the neck and one on the mane. I would hazard a guess that these are red-billed oxpeckers. The yellow-billed oxpecker is not too common in this region, but never say never. I must say the way the sun is shining down on this one oxpecker, its beak almost looks a bit yellow, but unfortunately a bit difficult at this distance. Can't see it convincingly. More than likely a red-billed oxpecker. I can't think it would be a yellow-billed. If we were in the more northern extremities of the Kruger, I would exercise a bit more caution, because it could easily be the yellow-billed oxpecker in that situation. So interesting to note how different weather can appear. I'm sitting a couple of kilometers south from here. It's a bit more overcast and the light is a bit more subdued, whereas where this giraffe currently finds itself, it looks like it's the sun is beaming down, very sunny, not much dissipated light, but of course just what a few clouds will do. Taxi lady, you'd like to know, are there any evergreen trees in South Africa, and if so, do giraffe feed on them? So there are a couple, actually quite a few. There's the tree wisteria, another one called an apple leaf, your bush willows, which we can see quite a bit here. some of the acacias are, well, sorry, acacia doesn't exist anymore for our African trees, but it was the name I knew. The chelias, or your thorn trees, they will keep their leaves, but they will start to lose them at a point. You can actually see that giraffe is feeding on an apple leaf. I can make it out ever so slightly. But a giraffe's first choice generally tends to be the thorn trees or the vachelias. It prefers those, or those are kind of like its preferred browsing. And as the season wears on and trees start to lose a few of their leaves, etc., like knobthorns, they will start to go for the evergreen trees. The thing with evergreen trees are that they tend to have a lot more tannins in the leaves, and obviously tannins start to taste bitter. They can also affect the giraffe. I mean, it would have to be in large excessive quantities to do real damage, but yeah, it's not very palatable for them. So you will see them kind of avoid these trees that are evergreen until it gets to a situation where they need to eat something or they would starve to death. But they will often go for the trees, these trees last. I can't see exactly what it's feeding on. To the back of it is an apple leaf from what I can see. But predominantly in this area seems to be a couple bush willows. It looks like it was actually feeding on an acacia now. It was a little hard to see with the camera, but yeah, and that also comes back to that thing of they browse very shortly because the tree starts to up its tannin levels in the leaves when it's being browsed on, so it can never browse for too long on a tree. Nikita with the age-old question, you'd like to know how many neck bones do giraffe have compared to humans. So surprisingly, and I know this is always a very interesting fact, giraffes have the same number of neck bones as humans do, just 7. The difference is that each vertebra in a giraffe is quite massively elongated, so that's what actually gives them that incredible neck length. So it's not more bones, it's just all kind of the same blueprint, just adapted a bit more specifically for the unique adaptation. Melanistic marble, I do agree, they are always very beautiful animals. They're very enjoyable to watch. I always love the very pale patch that they have on the back of their ears there, and we can see it quite nicely on this giraffe, and it contrasts quite heavily as we see the dark spots, etc., and then all of a sudden this very pure white spot there. It's been theorized that it's a bit of a follow me signal, that they can see one another while browsing, but it is honestly so striking, and it's something I never noticed until I saw a giraffe very close up near our house once. Benji, you were asking how the giraffes drink water from the puddles, or the waterholes, I assume. It sounds ironic, but the word is carefully. So what they will do is they will spread their front legs apart quite a bit, and that will allow them to lower their head down to the water. So they kind of do the splits with their front legs, and they slowly lower their head down, and that's how they sip the water up like that. Obviously quite a precarious position for them because they can't see any approaching danger, and they're quite vulnerable to slip, or they have to stand up straight before they can run away. So it is a bit of a precarious situation for them. Funny enough, I don't think I've actually ever heard of a giraffe necessarily being caught at a waterhole like that. I'm sure it has happened, but in Kruger it seems that the lions chase them and they tend to actually slip and fall eventually, and that's the secret to catching them. I think inadvertently, since late in the dry season most cats hang around water sources, that will also be the result of it. Quite pretty to see this fork-tailed drongo preening himself here, making good use of the solar panel as a perch. They are incredibly interesting birds, very good at mimicking other bird calls or other animals' alarm calls. Voracious catchers of insects in the air. And they'll often follow elephants or buffaloes, even giraffes, or large mammals as they move through the bush and disturb and stir up other insects, and they'll hawk these insects from nearby. So they do often say also, if you hear a fork-tailed drongo in the bushes up in front of you, if you're on foot in the bush, you should be wary. There could be an elephant or a buffalo maybe nearby. But they are very beautiful. They've got very striking deep red eyes. Also very brave little birds. They'll happily chase and harass any raptors that enter the vicinity and hence send them on their way. Like I say, small bird, big attitude. It appears like that's a chick there, and the adult is on the left. Well, we're going to leave Rosie's pan and we're going up to Victoria Falls to see some vultures. It's been a long time since we saw them. Certainly looking quite dry here at Victoria Falls, but I do believe these are the branches of a baobab, so I would not expect to see leaves on them at this time of year. I'm sure the vultures are getting ready for feeding time. I know it's not something we've seen for quite some time due to the show hours, but as winter approaches, we will be enjoying many vulture feasts. They are always certainly some of my favorite birds to watch. I really do admire them quite a bit. Nature's unsung heroes. Also have quite a few swifts flying around here. I'm not going to take a guess at what species they are moving way too quickly. Could possibly be some spine tails, which is also a unique type of swift, but once again it's quite hard to tell. I can at least tell you that the vultures are white-backed vultures, so that's quite an easy one. Connie, you'd like to know if vultures hunt and kill animals, or do they eat animals that are already dead? Very good question. Now, of course, vultures predominantly scavenge. That is what they're specialized to do. And they get almost all their food from carrion and carcasses and scavenging. Interestingly enough, I remember when I started birding, reading through a field guide. It was the Roberts Field Guide. That's got quite a bit of information in it. And it's interesting to note that all the vultures are capable of catching small mammals, things like that, like rabbits, rodents, mice, lizards, etc. I've personally never seen it, and I don't think they are very well adapted for doing it compared to eagles and hawks and other birds of prey. But they it has been recorded, it has been researched, and it is known that they do capture small animals occasionally, but I would say the bulk of their feeding is done by scavenging. Actually reminds me, last year when we were in the Kruger National Park, we came across a bit of an interesting crime scene. There was a dead scrub hare, and there was a white-headed vulture nearby, but there were also tawny eagles. and initially I was quite convinced, oh, it must have been the tawny eagles that killed the scrub hare, and the white-headed vulture had come to scavenge, because I think there was also a battler at one point, but anyway. And then after doing some more reading, I actually found out that white-headed vultures are quite well known for catching scrub hares or smaller rodents, and on the contrary, the tawny eagle is a well-known kleptoparasite that steals food from other birds. So it shows you how interesting things can be, and they're not always what they seem. Of course, the white-headed vulture is not a vulture we often see, so it's obviously a bit more specialized compared to the white-backed vulture or the lappet-faced vulture, which I think specializes quite a bit on scavenging. Actually, I actually want to go read up a bit more on that again. But yeah, still very interesting. On that topic, even fish eagles are known for being major scavengers. They steal lots of kills and food from other birds. For example, if a grey heron catches a fish eagle will often try come and steal it. I wonder if there is a lurking crocodile to be seen. I do know there is some crocodiles in this pan. It looked like there was a duck on the shoreline there, as well as a lapwing. I couldn't see the duck properly though. It seemed quite dark. Could also be a cormorant. Anyway, it was nice to see our vultures, and I'm sure we'll be spending a bit more time here in the coming months. But we're going to head back to Tau for a bit. Zebras are looking quite at ease there, resting on one another. It's one way to take a break when you need to be on your legs for a quick getaway. Luckily they're quite far from the water, so they'll see any danger approaching. There's some zebras chasing each other, but I think that's just more for a bit of a territorial dispute. A very serious fight there. You never want to get kicked or bitten by a zebra. They've got a nasty bite and a nasty kick. It seems like a bit of a serious dispute between these two males. A bit of action at the end of our show, so that's quite nice to see always. I was about to mention how the crocodiles have disappeared, but the zebras have now stolen the show for us. And he's still going at it very convincingly. I was gonna say I didn't know who was the winner, but they stopped all of a sudden. I have a feeling the one at the... Oh, it's quite tough to tell now. I thought the one at the back had won or was being dominant, but now it seems like they've switched roles once again. I can only imagine how painful it must be to be bitten by a zebra. Funny, no one's being necessarily chased off, so I don't know if it's just a temporary pause in the fight before they have another bout. I must say at the same time it doesn't seem too serious, but it's also not like those are light blows that are being given or exchanged. Very interesting nonetheless.
When nature calls, Maui is the only answer. Satisfy your wanderlust and take to the open road in one of our fully equipped motorhomes. Boasting a fridge, gas stovetop, AC and bathroom, our motorhomes are comfortable and spacious, making any self-drive adventure in the Kruger or garden route memorable. Whether you travel alone, as a couple or the whole family, Maui has a motorhome for you. Maui, home where you roam.
The Masai Mara in February 2027 with your favorite Wild Earth guides. This is an extraordinary safari opportunity. You'll stay at the exclusive Kobe Mara, a private villa in the action-packed Northern Mara. Your hosts for this fun-filled safari are David Gigi Gitu, Cedric Dold, and me, James Henry. When the Mara turns green, life surges, the air hums, the earth stirs, and the wild comes alive. Here, the wonder never ends. It just changes color. Every storm, every sunrise, every sweeping vista is an expression of wild magic. Visit the Masai Mara. Experience the magic.
I said leave and he left. We've had no luck with leopard, so I'm manifesting.
Talk about sunbathing in style.
Yeah, Paul? Must be nice, eh?
And there you go.
Never know.
When adventure calls, answer with Brits. Take on Southern Africa's most breathtaking landscapes from behind the wheel of a fully equipped 4x4 or SUV. From tents and bedding to a fridge and full kitchen gear, everything you need is already on board. And with 24-hour roadside assistance, you're free to go further and explore with confidence. Open roads, total freedom, no limits, just the journey ahead. Brits, equipped for adventure.
It looks like peace has been restored once again after that difference in opinions. I would say the one that ran off was more than likely the loser. I don't know if it was maybe two stallions on top of each other's territory, and that's kind of what resulted in the standoff. So I can only assume that one that ran off went back to those zebras we initially saw out in the open. So maybe just a bit of a show of force between the two, but I do think they were a little more evenly matched, but I don't think there was necessarily a fight for the herd. It's just tough to say if there's more zebras near this male here, maybe just hiding behind the dam wall. Here the plot will thicken once more. A couple of zebras now approaching here. I'm not too excited to see one another. It could be a young group of stallions there. Everyone seems a bit boisterous. But that being said, zebras can be very aggressive towards one another. Stallions will kill foals that are not their own. Females will also hurt or attack any other foals that come too close, or fights between females are also not uncommon. So yeah, as elegant as zebra look at times, they can be quite aggressive and harsh towards one another. Funny, the wall of the waterhole does not look too large, but there's actually quite a few animals hiding behind it. A bit of a mystery taking place over there. Those zebras still appear to be in the same position. Nothing much has changed there. I was going to say there's something funny in front of them, but there's a waterbuck male that's lying down in front of the zebras there. Obviously the depth perception skewing the way it looks a bit, but also something looked a bit funny. I think he's a fair bit of a distance away from the zebras there, and everyone seems quite content, snoozing away the midday hours now in the heat. So everything's looking rather idyllic here the last few minutes of our show today. Zebras are looking quite cozy and comfortable in the small herd, and this waterbuck bull does not appear to have much of a worry. There we go. A few more zebras waltzing in here. I wonder if it will cause a bit of panic. A lot of head shaking and posturing. But once again, thanks to everyone for joining in today's show. It was very nice to be back after quite a while of not doing any. Enjoyed all the sights and sounds. I hope it was the same for everyone who watched today. And that I will hopefully see you in the next couple weekends or Sunday sessions.